What is up, friend and fellow anti-netter? Scott Scheper here. It's been a little bit of I haven't really posted a YouTube video in a little bit, and what I wanted to do right now is share something with you. So last night actually, I was on a call with Tyson J. Hayes. He's a member of the Scott Scheper letter, and I have a tribe, a community that has grown kind of organically, kind of quietly and secretly. You see, every time someone subscribes to the Scott Scheper letter, which is just to shill it, my physical monthly newsletter about writing, knowledge development, anti-net stuff, marketing, mostly writing and marketing. Honestly, not too many issues have been really focused on anti-net Zettelkasten stuff. It's all based on actually how do you actually produce and write and create and make a hell of a living as an independent writer, creator, and thinker. That's what the Scott Scheper letter is about. Anyway, I was hopping on a call yesterday with subscriber Tyson J. Hayes, and you're going to see this in a second. And towards the end of our call, which was only scheduled for about 30 minutes, he asked me a question, and this was like at minute like 43 of our 30-minute call. And we thought it was so good that I decided to hit the record button and share it with all of my members of my community. And being that I haven't, shared a YouTube video with you guys in a while, I decided to, say, what the hell, I'm going to actually also share this with you. And what he asks me is a question about, what other projects, what other things are kind of brewing in my, I guess it's over here, my anti-net back there. Let's see if I can do this. I'm coordinated enough. And I shared my response, and we touched on some very interesting things. We touched on something that I'm actually really fascinated with, and if you know about this field, which is the historical Jesus, then I welcome you to comment on it in the comments below. So anyway, I'm gonna let the conversation basically carry itself. I don't need to intro it anymore, and I hope you enjoy it. More stuff coming soon. Stay tuned, and always remember to stay crispy, my friend. Peace. Friends and fellow anti-nerders, Tyson J. Hayes himself, aka the father in residence of the Scott Scheper tribe. That's what we've just come up with. We've been having a essentially a sort of quasi VLC call for the past like 43 minutes. For the first time that him and I have connected one-on-one. And I purposely, because I know Tyson, you were gonna have already read the VLC calls. I wasn't going to do the VLC technique and framework on you
Oh,
because
you
I know.
tried.
So it's
You
so
tried.
it's
I pushed it right back on you. I was like, no, 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 sir. This is my
yeah.
phone call.
Yeah. So
Scott Preston Scheper.
so we are wrapping up this call, and Tyson asked me a freaking fantastic question. I don't even have the answer to it yet, by the way. And I was like, man, I wish I was recording this. And you're like, hey, why don't we record it? So here we
Let's
are.
do it.
Anyway,
You're making my podcast episode 11 that much easier. I'm just going to clip this and throw it on my show. So,
yeah.
Scott Paxton Scheper, because I'm going to keep guessing your name until I get it. Or shall I say Scott Presley Scheper, king of the anti-net? I, Tyson J. Hayes, father in residence in the name of the Scheper, the Lumen, and the Holy Anti-net. Are we going for like father figure, or are we going for like religious figure? I'm sorry. So
I think either.
Either would work. I can adopt a color. It'll be fine. So what I asked you, Sarah, before we hit the record button, was simply this: we all have our stubs in our anti-net. We have the zones of fascination that we stumble upon that we wish we had more time to explore. For me, that's going to be anything in the hard sciences right now. I love space. I love hard sciences. I don't have anything in my deck. My question to you, sir, is where is that for you? What thing would you love to come back to that you've just not had time because you've been too busy doing Right to Freedom, which I'm very excited to hear more about, and you all should be too. But where for you was that area? Where's that space you'd love to come back to?
Okay, so as you've just asked this the second time, I have three items, stubs. I like that term for, because it's a forest essentially, the anti-net, right?
Oh, I very
Three
much picked it up on your
items.
language.
Yeah, three items, or stubs that I'd love to come back to. Okay, so first one, is one I've been thinking of more recently with, and I was, issue number 8 was actually going to be way more diving into how to craft a story, but I realized I'm like, well, before I even craft and share the immaculate story, right? is most people get it wrong by just focusing on others instead of themselves, right? Or I said that the exact opposite way. They focus on their own story instead of like focusing on others. So that's where the VLC framework comes in.
Mhm.
But the stump that I would love to get into, and it's a big, thick, like kind of stack in my anti-net back there, is the essentially uh Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces. I have it kind of all mapped out, right? And it's in my anti-net. But what I
Literally
wanted
next
to
on my
do,
list, man.
yep,
Yeah, like
exactly. So what I wanted to do is I want to basically flesh out all those. I think it's like, 14 or 17 people have broken it apart differently. All of
mhm,
those 17 stages, whatever it is, of telling a great story, and
mhm,
then basically build out, entire book based on the Immaculate Story framework, which would
mm,
also tie in the a few other books back there that I have for telling like the master story, an immaculate story, right? The immaculate story formula, essentially.
mhm.
So that's something where I could see myself going in and focusing on for an entire year, writing a book on storytelling. Um, so that's one stump. Okay, I'm gonna keep going through a few of them. Okay,
I
we
got
can
so
come
many
back to
questions
them.
already, but please keep going. Yeah,
Yeah.
like this is amazing.
Okay. The second stump is this. This might surprise a lot of people. I am
Mhm.
extremely fascinated, and early on in our call, and let me shoot Terry a message real quick saying,
Apologies to Mr. Greer. I've taken
yeah,
so much of Scott's time.
yeah,
To be fair, he
um,
said he was like, completely expecting it.
yeah. So, okay, so the second stump, and we've talked about this, where I went into like the granular detail about how I'm not a fan of Saint Paul. I think he
Mm,
he completely got the doctrine of Jesus of Nazareth, the poor Galilean Jew, who preached basically what God was. God is love, and he would wash people's feet, and he would touch lepers who were like, it was unheard of. And he actually, Jesus of Nazareth, note
mhm,
Nazareth meaning not the one of Bethlehem, which Bethlehem is a complete fabrication of the Jesus story. Jesus was not born in Bethlehem. That was written later on and added to the Jesus story in order to keep up with and keep in congruency with the essentially the prophecies of the Messiah is supposed to be born in Bethlehem, all of that. So that was written in later on. There's a lot of contradictions in the four gospels. I'm extremely fascinated with the history of what happened between the time Jesus died, Jesus of Nazareth, right?
mhm,
The man, and the Jesus of Nazareth, which was 30 AD,
mhm,
uh, between the time he died to the time that the first gospel was actually written, the Gospel of Mark. The order of the gospel, Mark was written in around 60 to 70 AD. So that's,
30
30 to
years then.
40 years after Jesus died. And mind you, it was all traveling word of mouth. There was no TV back then. So it was kind of a game of telephone. And the first gospel, Mark, it went Mark, Matt, Luke, John. And Mark was written in like 60 to 70. Matthew was written in like, around 80 AD. Luke was written around like 180, maybe something like that. And John was written like 110 AD. Okay. So
Uh-huh,
it's like a
fine.
long game of 40-year gaps. What happened in that time was Jesus's true message and
Mhm,
his true spirit was kind of lost in translation because Jesus spoke Aramaic, which is a broken kind of common form of Hebrew.
mhm,
And the first, like Paul, for instance, spoke Greek, right? He didn't know Jesus. And yet Paul is essentially the person that kind of wrote a large portion of the New Testament, and he wrote it in Greek. So there's a fascinating I have it in my antinet, that whole history of the true teaching of Jesus and who he was and how a lot of it has completely been lost and changed, and basically, orthodoxed to death, where there's all these rituals and, the doctrine of Christianity, where Jesus would come back today as this poor Galilean Jew who was preaching love and not having a lot of possessions. He would come back in this day and age and see a guy like Joel Osteen with like, literally Joel Osteen. If we look at his house, we can screen share it right now. Why don't we screen share? Let's look at
Let's
Joel
spy on
Osteen
Joel Osteen.
house right now. Okay, I'm gonna close this.
Well,
All right,
and so
so
while you're pulling this up, I do kind of want to just clue in the listener who was not involved in our early conversation. I held up Scott's book, The Anti-Net Zettelkasten, and said to him, Scott Pauline Scheper, this is your Pauline doctrine to the Church of Zettelkasten, and was kind of making jokes about it. But please, let's look at Joel Osteen. And he corrected me, rightfully so. This is closer to the Peter doctrine, at least, because he actually was getting closer to the truth. So Joel Osteen, American preacher.
Joel,
Okay, I actually
Joel
wasn't quite sure
Osteen's
who that was.
house. Okay,
Oh my
that's
God.
what it is. And watch his cars. I think he has like 4 Rolls Royces, $325,000 Ferrari.
Mhm.
So, like, here's his cars right here, right? Front of his house, all of that. So my main thing here is, like, imagine if Jesus came back today and saw this guy,
Mhm.
he would be appalled by guys like Joel Osteen. And so I'm fascinated with that subject. I love reading it. I love getting the history of it. And I realize this is kind of a touchy subject. It's a taboo topic because we've got a lot of religious people, people of faith
Mhm.
in the Scott Shepherd tribe. That's not to say that I'm anti-Christian,
No, and
because
nothing
because
of
I
that.
am, believe it or not, like I kind of like the contradictory of two things. Like,
Yeah.
I'm Catholic, believe it or not, yet
Interesting.
which is the complete, like, form of ritual tradition that Jesus would come back today and be like, well, actually, I didn't follow it. But, like, I think that even though the Catholic, they don't have a lot of things right, they have a lot of things way, way more in line and more right than what we can see on the other end of the spectrum, which is the, televangelist pastors who have ridiculous mansions and, Rolls Royces and Ferraris, right? That are
Hmm.
basically Joel Osteen. Joel Osteen is loving the business of selling Jesus because, number one, the great thing about selling Jesus is that Jesus doesn't take a cut.
Yeah.
There's
I
no
mean,
fee that Jesus takes. And number two,
yeah,
there's no taxes that he has to pay.
yeah.
And
I mean,
so the Catholic Church
if
has
I'm
done
selling,
that right. The Catholic
yeah,
Church does not have that temptation, the people,
yeah,
which I think is fantastic.
yeah.
But
I mean,
anyway,
if I'm selling your product, I'm expecting you to take your 10%. That's just expected. But so what you're telling
yeah,
me is I'm getting
yeah.
into the wrong
He's
business, Scott.
Joel Osteen is licensing Jesus and doesn't have to
Mhm.
pay a licensing fee, basically. Um,
So,
anyway, so the whole concept of who Jesus truly is, and even if it could apply to, if you're a spiritual or if you're secular, the true nature of Jesus, I think, is fascinating, and how it's
mhm.
changed is fascinating, and how it also can help you and people become better readers, writers, and thinkers. And okay, here's the crazy part: is
Mhm.
the same thing was happening with Nicholas Luhmann. Nicholas Luhmann, of the Anti-Net Zettelkasten. Nicholas Luhmann died in what was it, 1997, I believe, or 1998. And then we have Zonke Arens, who never
Mhm.
knew Jesus, speaks a
Right.
or never knew Luhmann, Jesus
Mhm.
Luhmann, whatever,
Mhm.
speaks a different language and is proselytizing it and getting the message across wrong. So I I see Zonke Arens almost like St. Paul, who has kind of screwed the pooch on getting the message correct, and I'm trying to restore it back to the true essence. That's what got us on that conversation.
It
But yeah,
was.
there's a whole stub in there. There's a whole stub in there for in
And
my Antonet for that.
so I'll let you to the third one in just a second. Because so far we've got Catholicism, we've got the Joseph Campbell myth. It is not a conversation with me if I don't recommend at least one book to you. So I will throw out Christopher Moore's Biff, which is about Jesus Christ's childhood pal. It's a comedy, and it's
Mm.
about the time that took place between, like, when Christ was born and when he became Christ. And it's a very satirical kind of look of it. Highly recommend it. If you're not,
Yes. All
you
right.
love Family Guy, you'll laugh your ass off.
Okay.
But that being said, like, I'm fascinated. I'm just absolutely deeply fascinated with that. And so, are you kind of saying you're more Constantine, and that you're kind of recollected the original notes and kind of restructured kind of what Lumen meant into kind of more of a consumable format? And that kind of, like,
Uh,
or am I getting that wrong? That kind of the
I
group of
think
people who put the Bible
didn't
together.
Constantine, that was in like the Council of Nicaea in like
Yeah,
350 around that
yeah. I'm more
AD.
thinking like the group of people that actually put together the New Testament as being kind of the New Testament. I may have gotten the name wrong.
Yeah, so I don't think, unfortunately, there's not a, like, I would say that if Jesus's biological brother, and believe it or not, he had a biological brothers, And it
Well,
says so. And it says so in the Gospels.
mhm.
But the Catholic teaching writes it off as, oh no, but he talked about everyone as his brothers and sisters. It's like,
Yeah,
no, no,
I'm sorry, but
there's
if Joseph
actually
and Mary are married, we're going to
uh
expect more to come out of
yes.
that marriage.
So James the Just was actually the brother of Jesus and ran the church for a very long time in or around, in Israel. And James the Just, he couldn't write. He was a poor, Galilean Jew that spoke Aramaic, but he taught the true teachings of Jesus, which was kind of like, the lineage of Jesus was kind of started with John the Baptist, who is
Hmm.
the radical, preacher and pastor, and almost kind of Jesus. And they've kind of written this out that, Jesus almost like interned or worked under him until John the Baptist kind of got killed. And then,
Hmm.
after Jesus was crucified, James the Just took over that early, Jesus movement, right? So
Hmm.
I would say that, like, if James the Just could write, then that's what you could consider me in this Zettelkasten movement. It's like James the Just, you could say, even though I did not know Lumen personally, I've actually talked to his son, and so that makes me a little bit
You've done
closer
more
than
work than I have. I'll give you
yeah.
that much. But you're making me think of so there's a story here about Shakespeare that he's not really like a real person, right? Like he came out of nowhere. He didn't really
Yes.
like, and
Yeah,
so
was
my
he a
like
real
my
person or not?
exactly. But
Yeah.
you're almost kind of making me wonder, kind of like there's like we're talking about the Joseph Campbell myths, where you get this kind of like this type of mythological figure who was kind of just comes out of nowhere, and the origin story is muddled, and we're seeing this repeated event. I'm just seeing between these two, but I'm guessing there's more. And I'm not trying to compare Jesus and Shakespeare, but more looking at kind of the Joseph Campbell storytelling kind of mono, like this kind of like hero that shows out of nowhere to like that, like that sends this message out into the universe. And you're just making me think of that, and that was kind of in that way. So you said we could I could honestly interview you about this for about another hour just on the Catholicism. You said three, and I want to make sure you get a chance to actually get to that third one. So
Yeah.
Joseph
Um,
Campbell, Catholicism, and what was the third one?
the third one is a book idea that I think you kind of alluded to. It would be a more accessible version and entryway into the Scott Shepherd letter type of
Mm-hmm.
tribe and movement, which really all centers around, I want to create an army of independent writers, creators, and thinkers. It's a newsletter about knowledge, writing, and marketing. I want basically to create an army of people who make a fantastic killer living, working for themselves, getting to
Mm-hmm.
get their ideas, whatever the niche or fascination or hobby is, and be able to make a fantastic living doing that. Right to Freedom, that program, which has like
Oh,
been in
you mean that
development
thing I've
for
heard about? Oh, I
yes,
mean I've
yes.
heard rumors.
That essentially will entail the same thing, but the vehicle for doing so all revolves around, which I think is the most powerful vehicle there is, about around the physical monthly newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a way to do that. There's a lot of people see the physical monthly newsletter, it's seemingly simple, but there's like so many critical factors that need to be sequenced in a certain way, that need to be lined up in a certain way if you want to have a successful physical monthly newsletter, right? And that's kind of what
Mm-hmm.
Right to Freedom is focused on. But anyway, overall,
Oh,
like, I'm thinking of writing a book called, there's this old book that was written by this guy named Joe Carbo that Gary Halbert talks about, that Gary
mm-hmm.
Halbert used to read. And he was an old
Mm-hmm.
direct response mail guy, okay, Joe Carbo. And
This
yes, and the Boron letters.
wonderful
Yep.
book you wrote recommended me. Yeah,
So
that one.
Joe Carbo wrote a book called I think I have it back here. Let me see. Down here.
Oh, I got a better look at Scott's office. So I see Cal Newport. Let's see. We gotta get Scott some more money to upgrade his camera. I've got lots of blurriness.
Yeah.
And let's see what else we got here. And I can see my children are home, and I'm just hear them ringing the doorbell. And while we're waiting,
Yeah, I don't know. It's somewhere. I just finished it. It's called The Lazy Man's Way to Riches or Path to Riches. It's like an old school book. Uh Carbo, The Lazy Man's Way to Riches. Well, thinking about potentially writing a book. Yeah, there it is. Um Kind of in the spirit of that, but focused on writing and calling it something like The Lazy Writer's Way to Riches. So that's another stub I have in there. And
yeah.
um
So to repeat my joke just a little bit that I made to you at the beginning of our call, I prefer it about this big and hardback, so I may brain my enemies with it to get through words through their thick skulls. Do you think any chance we can actually get a nice hardbound copy when you're done with that? I do
yes,
like
yes,
Lazy
yes,
Man's Way
yes,
to Riches. I
yes.
do enjoy that.
Yeah. So that's another one. The last one, which came to me 2 days ago or yesterday, I'm reading. Most of my time is when I'm not doing Right to Freedom or writing my newsletter. I'm like, you probably know, I get to the office and spend a lot of my time doing like literally just neuro imprinting and writing out F. Scott Fitzgerald by hand and writing my own stuff and chilling and you know traveling. And I've been reading a lot of F. Scott Fitzgerald's like some of his I've read several of his biographies, one of which sparked an idea. You see, F. Scott Fitzgerald, and this kind of relates to Stephanie Ann, for instance, and the people that are doing the 30-day challenges. Well, when you decide to do a 30-day challenge, like your podcast, which you're embarking on, you decide,
Yep.
you're like, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to get like as many rejections as possible. I'm just going to publish this and get zero listens, zero listeners, but I don't care. Screw it. Let's do it. I'm going to proceed anyway. Well, F. Scott Fitzgerald hit a point, and when he was, it was like in 1919 when he was just graduated college, and he was, his girlfriend who he was pursuing, which was Zelda Fitzgerald, a lot of stuff written about her. She stopped talking to him, and he was full of despair. He decided he was trying to work as in advertising in New York, and he said, "Screw it, I'm going to move home, going to move to Minnesota, and I'm just going to write." He gave up everything. He's a man who actually, loved gin and was notorious for, drinking himself to death, essentially, sadly. But at that time, he's like, I don't care. I'm just going to write as many stories as possible. And so from, I think the spring in like January, February, March of 1919, he submitted stories and wrote like 19 stories, and he collected 122 rejections in a row. And he kept going. He's like, I don't care. Screw it. Let's do it. Later that year, in September, he had a breakthrough, and his first novel called This Side of Paradise was accepted. And
Mhm.
ever since then, he had a nice life, and his career took off. And a
Sure.
lot of things. And that was, from the spring of 1919, he just said, screw it. I'm going all in. I'm getting 122 rejections, which is kind of like the same thing as you go through when you do your own 30-day podcasting challenge. And then what he did was, after that led into his first success. So I think there's a book idea here, and
Mhm.
I'm going to be talking about it. Is I think you need the law of 122 rejections. I did
Ooh,
the
I like
same
that.
thing with my daily Scott Scheper writings. I did over 122 days of just publishing, and I earned my 122 rejections. This is
Wasn't it like
very early days.
134, if I remember correctly? I was actually re-listening some of your early podcasts, and you were talking about that just after.
Yeah,
God,
the
what
day I
episode
was
was that?
on.
Yeah, I was going through your back catalog. I was actually trying to like catch up, which
Yep.
I do like the new intro by the way. And one thing I will say when it comes to your law of 122 rejections and publishing to zero subscribers is the one wonderful thing about the Scott Shepherd tribe is it's not been zero. I published it.
Mm-hmm.
People have been showing up. People are responding to me. I'm getting feedback. It's not zero. So
Yep.
if you decide to put this on YouTube, I'm not sure who we're actually talking to at this point. Here's my pitch to anyone who's listening. It's worth signing up. Okay. Scott will tell you, I was very reluctant at first. It's been worth every penny I've ever put into this. This group is amazing. Not just people like me, although I'm pretty amazing, as Scott will attest to. But no, we've
You
got
are.
some fantastic folks that are just really just pouring their heart and soul into here. And so if you decide, as I said, if you decide to put this on YouTube, please come join us. Like, come introduce yourself to me. Come talk to me. You will not be disappointed.
Yeah. Cool. Oh,
So
the
Scott, I am
father, the
deeply
father in
enjoying our chat.
residence.
I've got way more questions. I've got way more questions for you. So I'll hopefully ask this one quick one. And I haven't seen my kids in 5 days, so I'm deeply excited to go see
All
them.
right, get back to them, man. Get the hell off of this. Stop asking me
I know,
questions.
but I know, but I do have one question. One last question that's hopefully quick, and I don't mind if it's recorded. Don't mind if it's recorded. Hi, baby.
Uh-huh.
You have an obvious talent for spotting people. We mentioned Mr. Greer, we both know about the honorary Dr. Gaetan as you're a person as you're what that both of them have the spark of genius in themselves. What for you is your hiring process? Where do you recognize that potential talent? So minor story for me. To me, there's an intuition when I meet people. There's something about them, the way that they talk to me, the way that they respond. There's something in that you look at someone and go, it's potential, it's intuition, it's something. You look at, what is that word for you? What is that spark? What is that moment where you look at someone and say, I have to work with you more?
One word.
Mhm.
Passion. That's it.
All right. I think we just got the episode. We're done. Let's put that in the can.
Yeah.
If you can't respond to passion, I'm over it.
Yep.
So, Scott Scheper, I thank you so much. Let's see, Scott, what does he call you? Paxton? I don't think I've called you Paxton yet. Scott Paxton Scheper. If that is your real name, I will get it right eventually.
It is now.
All right. Scott Paxton Scheper, you like it better. Sir, it has been an honor. Please, I would love more of your time at some point. But yes, I need to go say hello to my children.
Tyson, my man, this was freaking awesome. Go say hi to the kids, and we'll hop on another one at some point. And
yes.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll probably, I'm gonna post this to the members first, and then maybe wait a day, and gonna get this on YouTube for everyone else to see. So if anyone else,
I will plug my own podcast, Tyson J. Hayes, a podcast. Please come talk to me. Subscribe to my newsletter too if you would like.
Tyson J. Hayes. Search it
Tyson
in the podcast store near you.
Exactly. It's on the RSS feeds. It should go out to all of them. But sir, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Tyson. Talk to you later, brother.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.